So I mentioned earlier about the importance of diversity within a team and the value that it has, and 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 just how naturally when we do get a group of people together to work together to a common goal and purpose and have different roles, you will get diversity within that team. And often when we think about diversity, we think about the big stuff, and quite rightly, we think about things such as cultural diversity or age diversity or gender diversity and so forth, and they're really important. And I'm not saying that this discounts that, but also I'm just trying to nuance it now and say, start to think more about diversity in working styles as well. So some of those some of those diversity um, examples that I've just given, they're very they're very visual. So someone with a disability, for example, often, not in all cases, but often, you'll see it. Someone with cultural diversity, for example, you'll see different characteristics and symbols of that diversity. Um, if we talk about uh, if we talk about age diversity, again, it's very visual. We talk about gender diversity, often it's very visual as well. When we talk about work approaches, diversity to work, it's often not as obvious, not as visual in what we see and what we do. So it's it's important that we, especially as leaders and managers, that we stop and we think about this. We, as the leader and the manager in the team, we act as the conduit between all the difference within our team, the different working styles, the different ways of thinking, the different ways of approaching a problem, the different focus areas that people will naturally gravitate towards, and so forth. And we don't necessarily want to have everybody talk or think or work in the same way. Because if we do, we end up having really amplified strengths in certain areas, but probably uh, the opposite exists where we have significant weaknesses in others. We want to have a good mix. We want to have a mix of people within our team who uh, who are people focused. We want to have a good mix of people who are factual and data focused. We want to have people who can be quick and spontaneous. We want to have people who are methodical and a little bit slower. We want to have people who and I talked about methodical, who are very process driven. We want to have people who are very creative and innovative. We want to have a really good mix of all those things so that we can lean on each other to make sure that we get um, a good cross section of thinking and cross section of approaches so we can come up with the best way to approach our work. And that is about being aware of diversity and about harnessing it and celebrating that diversity. One of the particular areas that I want to focus on in this discussion is on Meredith Belbin's 8 team roles. Um, the Meredith Belbin model can be a really great way to think about diversity to this nuanced approach that I've been uh, talking about regarding our approach to work. Belbin's 8 team roles is really an inventory of the 8 roles that are required in a team to have a well balanced team. And we can look at it from a macro perspective, say as an organization, and say as a large organization, we really need to have pockets within our organization that do these things. Or we can look at it from an individual, more micro analysis, such as our team, and say if our team's going to be effective, we really need to have a representation of all these different roles within our team so that it's well balanced, so that we can uh, uh, um, uh, be as productive and as effective as possible. As I said, as in a large, from a macro perspective, you'll have different departments that play these roles. From a micro perspective, you might have one team member that plays multiple roles. If you've got a team of 2 or 3 people, you may find that 2 or 3 people um, have to wear all these different hats, for example. The Belbin's inventory can be used both um, as an assessment tool to determine where we're at the moment, but can also be used as a tool to think about when we're recruiting and when we're looking to have people join our team on where we could really focus, or where there could be some advantage in terms of improving our diversity. So it can be used both as a retrospective tool, looking at where we are now, in terms of what our recruiting and hiring and training practices, but it can also be a futuristic tool, thinking about where we need to move and evolve our team to, so that we can be much more complete and rounded. So Belbin's 8 roles, and it's been increased to 9 roles since Belbin first put it out. But if we look at the table here, and this is sourced from Belbin.com, you can see that the team roles are the plant. The plant is the creative role within the team. It's creative, it's imaginative, it's free thinking, it generates ideas, and it solves difficult problems. So it's someone within the team who is creative thinking, someone who makes new connections from existing ideas. The next role is the resource investigator. This is an outgoing, enthusiastic, communicative, explores opportunities, and develops contacts. This is your networker. So a team and an effective team, or a well-balanced team, will have someone in the team who can network, who can communicate, share ideas about what we're doing, but also be able to draw on information from multiple sources when required. The third one is the coordinator. This is someone who is really good at delegating and identifying resources and matching those resources to what we need to do. So mature, confident, identifies talent, clarifies goals, delegates effectively. Then you've got the shaper. The shaper is challenging, dynamic, thrives on pressure, has the drive and courage to overcome obstacles. This is the real productive type of role, in a sense of it really is the motivator within the team. It encourages people to think about where they're going, think about the things that they're doing, and really push through. The fifth one is the monitor or the evaluator. Sober, strategic, discerning, sees all options and judges accurately. So the monitor or the evaluator is really the auditor type of role. It's analytical, it has a criteria, it matches to the criteria, it tries not to focus on emotion or subjectivity, and really just focuses on the data and what that represents. The sixth one is the team worker. The team worker is cooperative, perceptive, and diplomatic, listens and averts friction. And this is really where we talk about the social element of the team role. This is the social person, or the social role within the team. This is the role that we should all be, regardless of whether we're a monitor or a shaper or a coordinator or a resource investigator or a plant. We should all be wearing the team worker hat as well, because we're all part of the team. The next one is the implementer. Practical, reliable, efficient, turns ideas into actions, and organizes work that needs to be done. This is the person who is the production person. They get there, no fuss, head down, backside up, makes it happen. And then when they've done, then the completer to the finisher comes in afterwards. This is the person who has the painstaking, conscientious, anxious attention to detail. So often with the implementer or production type roles, 80%, 80-20 rule, get 80% of it done. That's going to get the bulk of it done. The completer finisher is the person who comes in and adds the icing to the cake. They polish it off. They check that it's up to standard. They look for errors. So sometimes it can be like a quality assurance or a quality control type of mechanism or role. And then you've got the specialist, single-minded, self-starting, dedicated, provides knowledge, skills in resupply. And this is the one that was added on later. The specialist is really the subject matter expert. There's a column there for allowable weaknesses that I'm not going to necessarily go into because it's not important in terms of the context of what I'm talking about here. But That's really the stuff that we need to minimize in terms of weaknesses. But I really want to just focus on these different roles and how it balances out. So Belbin says, if if we're going to have a well balanced team, we need to have a representation of all these things. If we're a large organization from a macro perspective, we need to have departments that do these things. So we've got to have an R&D department, and that's really our plan. We've got to have a uh, like a HR type of department, and that can be our resource investigator. It can also be a bit of team worker. We need to have uh, we need to have a quality assurance department, and that's our completer finisher. Or we need to have an auditing department that checks. So you can have these different departments that do these roles. When we get down to our level, and as a team leader of a team, and we look at our team, we want to really assess against these and say, well, these are all really important roles. Are they represented by the diversity in my team? Do I have creative thinkers within my team? Because not everybody's going to be a creative thinker. It takes a particular approach to work to be able to sometimes stand back and look at something and connect concepts and ideas that maybe other people won't. And that's the creative, open, we call it divergent thinking that some people are really good at. So you would look at your team and say, do I have a creative representation in there? Because we're constantly continuous improvement, innovation, evolution. Those type of things are really important. We need to have someone in the team who, when we're discussing issues and problems at a team meeting, might say, "Hey, well, that's really good, but have we thought about this?" That there's some of the other organizations are looking at this, or some of the other departments are looking at this. I've been thinking about it, and I thought, there might be an opportunity here for us, and then that can generate a discussion. But then we've got to also have people out there who are really good at coordinating within our team. People who can get out there and make contacts that can source us information that we may not necessarily have available through our formal processes, through their networks and contacts. We've got to have someone in there who's a high producer, like an implementer, but then we've got to have someone who has an attention to detail. I look at the team and go, hey, we're really, we've got some real hard workers in there, can produce some amazing outputs in terms of volume, but we just don't have the polish. We need to get someone within the team. And the problem is that if we try and sometimes you can, but sometimes we can try and make the implementer the completer finisher, and there might be two conflicting ways of working. And it might not be as productive as if we assign the role of implementer to one person and then completer finisher to another person. I mean, every workplace is different, and every team and mix and characteristics and so forth of the team will be different, and you'll assess that when you look around your team. But the idea is to say, well, if we're going to have a well-balanced, high-performing team, it really, all of these elements should be represented. And when we get down, particularly when we get down to the micro level, we can cluster these together in terms of action-orientated roles, people-orientated roles, and thought-orientated roles. And we can look from a bigger perspective, say we may have people within our team who are really strong on action-orientated stuff. We have people within our team who are really strong on people-orientated stuff. And we have people in our team who are really strong on thought-driven stuff. So analytical versus process versus people. And we can really start to use some of these tools to analyze the mix of our team and the balance of our team, and thinking about whether we have our team balanced right. Because how well it's balanced will depend on how well we perform, and how well we can produce the output or achieve the goal that we're trying to achieve.